Each Thursday at this time, we get to visit with our great friend McKenzie Taylor, senior editor of The Texan. You can visit TheTexan.news, see everything that's going on here in the state of Texas. McKenzie, good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm well, Chad. I think we're staying just a hair warmer than y'all are in Lubbock.
Yeah, just a little bit, I think. Let's see. Yeah, just a little bit. We're at 29, so it's not too bad just yet.
Okay, yeah, we're at 34, so it's balmy over here.
Yeah, balmy 34. So what's been going on in Austin this week with the legislature?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the moral of the story the last few weeks is that not much has been going on down here in the legislature, but there have been a few spicy moments. The House and Senate both gavelled in for a little bit this week, and we're on the House floor. So members, came in from out of town and were actually here in Austin for at least a couple of days, by and large. They did adjourn until next week, though, right? So they came in, did a couple of things. Largely, these are just, if they're on the floor, it's largely just resolutions or just general business. They're taking care of operational stuff. And a lot of it is, just ensuring that they're in Austin a little bit each week. We had, a resolution honoring a Congressman, Ron Wright from Arlington, who passed away this week. Representative Tinderholt and Representative Krause did those honors in the House, and Senator Birdwell did those in the Senate, just honoring the life of Congressman Wright, who passed away after a battle with cancer after contracting COVID-19. There were some committee hearings, which I know we'll get into. I know the Texas Senate is really going to bat for some of the budget items that they're tackling this legislative session. The lieutenant governor made a few headlines this week talking about what will be his priorities, and he looks to announce those come next week. The governor's already done that from his side. So there are a few things that happened, but by and large, it was a pretty slow week here in Austin, and it will continue to ramp up as session goes on.
Yeah, as we kind of look ahead towards the lieutenant governor's priorities, how does that work compared to when the governor puts out his emergency items and the lieutenant governor comes out and says, "Here are my priorities"? How does that work exactly?
Yeah, well, oftentimes they overlap, right? But when the governor, and this gets a little nerdy here, but if the governor says, hey, I have these emergency items that I want the legislature to address throughout session, that even goes on a different calendar, right? There's an emergency calendar that is dealt with, and legislators address those items first when they come to the floor. Usually the governor tasks the carrying of those bills, to very high-ranking members or members that he feels can ferry those bills through the chambers well. When the lieutenant governor says, hey, here are my priorities as acting president of the Senate, he basically says, here's what my chamber, what this legislative body will be tasked with going forward. And, already a few of them aligned to that. The lieutenant governor came forward and said, hey, I'm going to be tasked, we're going to make sure we address these items or business protections for COVID-19 related lawsuits, which is part of the governor's emergency item list. And we also have expanding rural broadband, and that's also part of the governor's emergency items list. So oftentimes these things overlap, but one is a little bit more formalized in terms of emergency items. It'll be a different calendar versus the lieutenant governor just saying, hey, here's what my chamber will be tackling this session. Yeah,
absolutely. We had some, I guess, interesting moments yesterday. The Texas Attorney General during a hearing yesterday, really taking it from some Republicans and Democrats, just asking them a lot of tough questions.
Yes, to say the least, Chad, absolutely. So there was, there's been drama surrounding the Attorney General's office for years now, in some degree. But in the last 6 months, that really has been heightened with some stories that have come forward. Top aides in the Attorney General's office coming forward with accusations of abuse of office, bribery, some really big accusations, especially when your staff is the one making the accusations. That has been a big story. And we've been following that closely the last 6 months, news all over. It's been, one of the biggest, if not the biggest political story in Texas. And so yesterday, the Attorney General went to bat for his budget, for the budget of his office, essentially saying, hey, here's what I think we should be allotted versus what the Senate had proposed. The Attorney General wants 150 more positions in his office of about 4,000 people than the Senate is willing and has proposed. And there, just like you said, there were some big moments where Republicans were, the ones going to bat with the Attorney General, the embattled Ken Paxton. And then we had Texas Senate Democrats also saying, hey, what was the point of this lawsuit, alleging election fraud, where Texas sued 4 other states and said, hey, we think that election fraud occurred. And there was all this argument about standing, whether or not that was, smart in terms of a taxpayer angle. So Democrats were attacking on that front. Paxton largely defended his position and his choice to do so and file that suit, which, Democrats obviously very much disagreed with, and some Republicans agreed with the tactics and some didn't. So really he was hit from both sides, from both a budgeting perspective, and even though that is budgetary in terms of what resources you allot to fight that kind of battle, that's also very political, right?
Yeah.
So it was certainly he was caught from both sides here, a rock and a hard place for the Attorney General.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those where he had to expect that going in with the budget overall for the state where it is right now. Nobody wants their budget cut. Like nobody's going in and saying, yes, please cut my budget. You have these different areas they still want more money. Someone's going to have to take a hit somewhere. And Republicans, I think both sides asked some fair questions, but Republicans asking, okay, why do we need to have this much money dedicated?
Yeah.
Those are very good questions, not only just in the political world, but for taxpayers to know what's going on with their money.
Absolutely, even from a transparency perspective, right? I mean, we're looking at essentially a $90 million difference in budget for this very influential office. And certainly questions deserve to be answered. And just like you said, Chad, I mean, I'm sure the Attorney General went into yesterday knowing these questions would at least be asked, right? I mean, this should not come as a surprise. Just like you said, in terms of a transparency and taxpayer perspective, and just in terms of where his office is at right now. There's just all sorts of things to consider, both politically and, in terms of budget items. So it was definitely a very heated discussion, and I don't think that will stop anytime soon. And even today, there's news in terms of new developments in terms of what the Attorney General is dealing with in terms of bribery. So there's all sorts of new angles here, and more information continues to come out. And I doubt that this fight over his budget will not be heated for the next little bit here. Yeah,
absolutely. Of course, we're visiting with McKenzie Taylor with The Texan. You can go to TheTexan.news. And McKenzie, what can people find on the website today? Some stories maybe that you want to point out to people.
Absolutely. One of our reporters, Daniel Friend, put together an incredible rundown of what gun control proposals have been filed in the Texas House and Senate. Particularly this week, he went into red flag laws, talking about which proposals, have been filed that would enact red flag laws or protect against red flag laws for those who care about Second Amendment issues. We have all sorts of information on the Mavericks and national anthem debacle that happened this week. Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban saying, hey, we haven't played the national anthem for the last 13 games. And then, the Dallas Stars coming forward and saying we will absolutely be playing the national anthem. The Lieutenant Governor coming forward, the Star Spangled Banner Protection Act, all sorts of drama there. We've covered that very in depth. All the Texas Senate budget items we've been covering, in terms of what can be expected for taxpayers going into this very difficult budgetary cycle. So we have all sorts of stuff there. Another thing we have that I think is really interesting for West Texas folks, one Austin representative, a Democrat from Austin, has filed a bill that would impose a 25% tax on natural gas flaring. It's certainly an interesting proposal there that would affect a lot of folks in Texas. So we're following all of that, and we'll be following, as the legislature convenes again next week. Very well.
McKenzie Taylor with the Texan News. Appreciate your time as always. We'll visit again next week and try to stay warm in Austin.
I'm back at you, Chad. Thanks so much.
Thank you. That's McKenzie Taylor with the Texan News here on the Chad Hasty Show.